Hi. My name is Allison, and I am going to present to you your previous lesson in Art 6 that your teacher assigned you to study and answer the guide questions. In this video we are going to check your assignment about printmaking and introduce to you new topics and assignments. In your assignment number 1, you were asked by your teacher to watch a video about the Philippine motif and designs, then assigned you to draw the 11 motif and designs presented in the video. These motifs and designs are the following. Number 1 is the Lingaling O. Lingaling O signifies abundance, health, wealth, fertility, ancestry, virility, motherhood, and way of the sacred healer used by the Ifugao, Bontoc, and Kalinga. There are many variations of this symbol as you could see in the pictures. The symbolist is also shown. Number 2 is Nilwat, or Fernit, is a symbol for fertility, strength, and health. Number 3 is Gayamanan. It is symbol for safety, long life, spiritual protection and guide. Number 4 is Tinatalaw. It is symbol for day and night. Number 5 is Pakudos. Was originated by Hanyanu Manjian. It is the tree of life branching out to all 4 mystic corners. Number 6 is Bulak Ka Labig. It is a wild roselle flower used as food spice. Its symbols means life-giving. Number 7 is Tugi Tugi. It is a zigzag pattern inspired by mountain. It symbolizes life's ups and downs. Number 8 is Zikag Sikag. It is inspired by a fish bone. This fish bone mirror arrow symbolizes path of life. Number 9 is Paco Paco. It is inspired by wild fern branches left and right, which means dream of life. Number 10 and 11 is Paco Rabong, or Akil. It is a geometric motif inspired by plants. Here are the simple drawing for the Philippine indigenous design motif. Please pause the video and copy the drawings in your notebook and name each motif design. Here are the works of your schoolmates. Drawn by Samantha Ann, left, and Ada Irene, top right, from grade 6, Earth. Here are from grade 6, section Saturn. Drawn by Elmer, left, and Jeremiah James, right, from grade 6 Saturn. Drawn by John Carlo, left, and Divine Angel, top right, from grade 6 Saturn. Drawn by Kai Landre, left, and Jan Miko Salja, right, from grade 6 Saturn. Drawn by Ryan, top left, Lady Jamaica, bottom left, and Maria Cassandra, right, from grade 6. And lastly, drawn by Rain Janelle, left, and Stephanie Marie, right, from grade 6 Saturn. Now, let us check the answer for your assignment number 2 in Art 6, also part of the topic, printmaking. Number 1. What is the first essential tool or equipment presented in the video? The answer is, the first essential tool or equipment presented in the video is the screen. Number 2. Can you build your own screen, or it can only be purchased? The simple answer is, yes. You can build your own screen. Number 3. What materials a screen is made of? The answer is, a screen is made up of an aluminum or a wooden frame. Number 4. What first thing you should do when you got your screen? The answer is, the first thing you should do when you got your screen is to degrease it. Number 5. What do you mean by degreasing? The answer is, degreasing means you remove dust particles on the screen by cleaning it with soap and water. Number 6. What do you call the paint-like material that is being coated on the mesh of the screen? The answer is, the paint-like material that is being coated on the mesh of the screen is an emulsion. Number 7. What is the second essential tool or equipment presented in the video? The answer is, the second essential tool or equipment presented in the video is scoop coater. Number 8. How to properly coat the mesh of your screen using scoop coater? The answer is, to properly coat the mesh of a screen, tilt the screen 45 degrees and let the emulsion drip on the screen. Once the emulsion touched the screen, push the scoop coater against the screen and then pull it up to the end top of the screen. Outside is first coated and then the inside with the same process. Number 9. What is the ideal ratio of emulsion to coat the outside and inside of the screen? The answer is, the ideal ratio of emulsion is 1:1. 1 coat on the outside and 1 coat inside of the screen. Number 10. Why you should keep the emulsion away from the direct sunlight or exposed it to an airy room? The answer is, emulsion is light sensitive, and exposing it to direct sunlight or an airy room will make it dry easily. Number 11. What do you call a screen that is already coated with a dry emulsion? The answer is, a screen that is already coated with a dry emulsion is called stencil. Number 12. What is the third essential tool or material presented in the video? The answer is, the third essential tool or material presented in the video is the transparency paper. Number 13. Can you create a film positive artwork without using a printer on a transparency film? The answer is, yes. You can still create a film positive artwork on a transparency film by using a Sharpie or a permanent ink marker. Number 14. What are the 3 ways in exposing to register the artwork on the screen? The answer is, the 3 ways in exposing to register the artwork on the screen are: 1 is, out on the sun, 2 is, having a light source on top, and 3 is, a light source hit from the bottom. Number 15. What will happen to the unexposed emulsion on the screen when you wash it with water? The answer is, the unexposed emulsion will break down and will be washed out by the water. Number 16. What is the 4th essential material presented in the video? The answer is, the 4th essential material presented in the video is the ink. Number 17. What is the 5th essential tool presented in the video? The answer is, the 5th essential tool presented in the video is the squeegee. Number 18. What is the term used to describe the process of filling an ink to the stencil? The answer is, the term used to describe the process of filling an ink to the stencil is flooding. Number 19. What are the 2 printing method presented in the video? The answer is, the 2 printing method presented in the video are push method and pull method. Last. Number 20. What are the 2 ways of drying the ink on surface of a canvas? Can you dry the ink under the sun? The answers are, the 2 ways of drying the ink on surface of a canvas are, by using a flash dryer and by using a heat gun. And, yes, you can also dry the ink on a canvas under the sun, but it will take a little longer. Now, let us answer assignment number 3. The step-by-step process in silkscreen printing. Number 1. Based on the video, write the step-by-step process of preparing the stencil. To prepare the stencil. 1. Degrease the screen by removing the dust particles using soap, scrub and water. 2. Dry the screen by air drying it on an airy room. 3. Apply an emulsion on the screen. 1 on the outside and 1 in the inside. 4. Dry the screen in a dark room. 5. Register the film positive artwork on the screen by exposing it to a direct light. It can be a direct sunlight, a top light source or a bottom light source. 6. Lastly, wash out the unexposed emulsion to reveal the film positive artwork that registered on the screen. Number 2. Based on the video, write the step-by-step process of preparing the film positive artwork. To prepare the film positive artwork. 1. Download an image that you want to put on a transparency paper. 2. Print the downloaded image on a transparency paper. You can also use a permanent ink marker to draw an artwork in the transparency paper. And lastly, 3. Register the film positive artwork on the screen. Number 3. Based on the video, write the step-by-step process of inking the artwork on a canvas. On inking a canvas. 1. Lay down a canvas such as t-shirt on a flat surface. You can load the t-shirt on a palette or simply on a smooth, flat surface such as table. 2. Put an ink on the screen using a spoon or spatula. But the screen should not be touching the canvas or t-shirt. 3. Drag the ink using the squeegee from top to bottom of the screen. This is flooding. 4. Lay flat the screen on the canvas or t-shirt and start pushing or pulling the ink using the squeegee. You must see the image clearly, and that means the image is successfully transferred on the t-shirt. 5. Lastly, dry the canvas or t-shirt using flash dryer, a heat gun or simply dry it under the sun. These are the tools and materials used in silkscreen printing. Most essential tools or materials used in silkscreen printing are screen, scoop coater, emulsion, ink, and squeegee. Then, other tools or materials used in silkscreen printing are palette, light box, flash dryer, washout booth, drying rack, heat gun, thermal gun, and adhesive. Now, let's proceed to the discussion of a new lesson and new assignments in Art 6. Our new lesson is about the technological advancements in t-shirt printing. Please copy the following for your lecture note in Lesson 8 in Art 6. Apart from the traditional silkscreen printing method for putting designs on shirts, there are new modern methods used by t-shirt makers and enthusiasts. One is iron-on transfer. One way to print a design on fabric such as t-shirt is through the iron-on transfer technique. A design is printed on a special paper in reverse. The image is pressed and transferred onto the fabric using a flat iron. Artists can create a design on the computer and print it on the transfer paper. This can then be used to print on the t-shirt. Among big companies, a heat press is used to transfer the images, making the printed design clearer and less prone to flaking, which can happen if the process is manually done with a home iron.
There are two types depending on the printer used, for inkjet and for laser. Generally speaking, inkjet transfer papers tend to express better color, whereas the laser tends to be more durable. There are also different types depending on the color of the textile where the image will be applied. You would want to use transparent or clear transfer film on white or light colored textiles. Because the background is see-through, the outer edges will not be noticeable. For dark or black textiles, you want to use white background films. As the background is white, only the image where the cutout part should be transferred. Iron-on heat transfer paper, printer, inkjet or laser, scissors, iron or heat press. Edit the image with an image editing software. You might need to print mirror image depending on the type of textile used. Cut out the exact image from the detail paper. Smooth out the textile or t-shirt where the image will be applied. Remove any wrinkles with the iron. Place the decal on top of the prepared textile or t-shirt. For the light textile, have the printing side face down towards the textile. For the dark textile, separate the backing paper from the printed film. Then, place the film on top of the textile face up. Place the backing paper on top. Iron evenly all over with one side of the iron. Then you want to maintain same pressure and move around to cover evenly. For dark transfers, place the backing on top before ironing. Without the backing protecting the film, the transfer could stick to the iron. Transfer papers will only work with their designated printers. It is better to stretch the film after the transfer. That will prevent the film from becoming stiff later on. Never iron the transfer without the silicone sheet backing on top. Also, do not iron right on top of the transfer. Keep the remaining papers in dark, cool place, preferably less than 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Flip over the laundry and hand wash in cold water to avoid discoloration. Also refrain from using bleach, fabric softener or any similar liquids. Please wait for at least 2 days after transfer before washing. If you want more information about our products, please visit our website at www.sunnyscoper.co.kr. You can also email us if you have any questions. I've put the email address down below.
The other one is direct-to-garment or DTG. Direct-to-garment printing uses a modified inkjet printer to directly print the design on the t-shirt without the use of a stenciled image or a squeegee to apply ink through a mesh. Textile ink is the same used in t-shirt screen printing. For your assignment, please pause the video and copy your assignment. In your notebook, write down the advantages and disadvantages of the following method of printmaking: silkscreen printing, iron-on transfer, and direct-to-garment, DTG. Please see example in the next slide. Here is an example of layout or format for your assignment about the advantages and disadvantages for those various methods of printmaking. For your art project, on a clean, blank, short bond paper, draw a design of t-shirt using different Philippine motif designs. It must be drawn by hand. You can use one or more colors in your design. For your advanced assignment in arts, in your notebook, draw and label the common parts of a camera. Write down the common parts of a camera and its functions.
Hey guys, I'm Saurav, and in this video, let's talk about composition in photography. Now, before we talk about composition, let us understand what exactly a photograph is. So a photograph is basically a two-dimensional box which is actually representing a three-dimensional world. And composing a photograph means placing the elements of your image in a way that the image is able to tell or convey a story to the viewer. Now the question is, we have understood what composition is, but why is composition so important in photography? So as a photographer, the technical settings like the exposure, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, white balance and stuff are the technical things you have to master. The real challenge of photography is how you compose your image and your composition. So composition is the most important thing that will tell the story of the image to the viewer. As a photographer, you should work hard to compose your image. As a viewer, the viewer should not work hard to see a beautiful photograph. If he sees a photograph, it should be good enough. Okay, the viewer should understand what the subject is and what the actual story is. So that is the reason why composition is so important in photography. Now, I will show you certain guidelines that you can use for composition. The images that you're seeing are shot by some of the best photographers from India that I personally know. Thanks a lot to them for providing images to show you what exactly composition is, and you guys will have a better understanding how you can use them in your photographs. So let's begin with it. The first composition guideline is rule of thirds. Now, if you have read somewhere about composition, you might have heard about rule of thirds. Generally, as a beginner photographer, what we do is basically we try to shoot a subject and keep it at the center. Now, the thing is, if we do that, it might result into a boring image. So, rule of thirds suggests that you divide the image into three different parts, horizontally and vertically, into three equal parts, and place your subject in any of the four intersection points. Now, if you place your subject in any of the four intersection points, the human brain directly sees those subjects, and it's very easy for them to focus and grab attention towards the main subject or the main element of your image. So rule of thirds is a very easy guideline that you can use, and if you use rule of thirds instead of simply placing the images or the subjects in the center, you will realize that you're creating much more dynamic and better looking images. The next guideline is centered composition. Now, as I said that placing subjects in the center might make the image boring, but photography is an art form, okay, and it has exceptions, and similarly even this has an exception. Sometimes placing your image dead center can also make the image look interesting. So basically, when you're using centered composition, one thing that you have to understand is you have to balance the left and right part or the top and bottom part of the image. So now this type of composition works amazing when you have certain kind of symmetry in your scene or when you want to show some reflection. So centered composition can also create amazing images, and they can look simple but at the same time very visually appealing. So if you have some kind of symmetry, try to create an image with balanced composition, because that can look very pleasing to the eye, and also amazing images will be produced. The next composition guideline is leading lines. Now, as the name suggests, leading lines means there will be lines which lead or converge to a single point or your subject. Now, leading lines is a very strong composition technique that you can use to spice up your images and to make it much more dynamic. Now, the challenge while using leading lines is that always when you're shooting, you won't get those lines very easily. Sometimes the lines won't even be straight. There will be curved lines as well. It is your job as a photographer to visualize and have patience and analyze the scene and try to visualize what are the lines that you can use to compose your images. You can also place the most important subject or the element of your image in the point where all the lines are converging, and it can be a very strong composition technique to create very beautiful images. So make sure when you're shooting next time, try to visualize certain lines which can help you to create dynamic images. The next composition guideline or a composition tip is to use some kind of foreground interest. So now when we are shooting and we are so overwhelmed by the subject, we only focus on the midground and background and we kind of ignore the foreground, and that can be a huge mistake while composing your images. If you add some kind of foreground element that actually complements the scene, your images will look much more dynamic because you're adding interest from the foreground to the midground all the way to the background. So if you add some kind of foreground interest in your images, you will see that your images are slightly getting much more interesting, and it can also help to tell a story and to actually draw the attention of the viewer from the foreground to the background where the actual subject is present. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is the focal length. Now, the focal length you're shooting makes a hell lot of difference. So even if you're using a similar composition, it also depends a lot on what focal length you're shooting. So if you're shooting with a wide angle lens, it will give you a very different image. If you're shooting with a 50mm lens, it will give you a different result. And now if you're shooting with a 200mm lens, it will give you a different result. In short, the focal length matters a lot. Every focal length has a different look to it. As you zoom in, the background starts compressing. So you have to know what kind of shot do you exactly want, okay, and according to that you have to use the focal length. Maybe for if you are shooting landscapes and you want a wider perspective, use a wider angle lens. If you are shooting portraits, something about 35 to 85mm works great. And now if you're shooting some kind of wildlife or sports, something about 200 to 300mm works great. So you have to visualize what kind of composition do you want, and according to that you have to smartly select the lenses. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the aperture. Now, why the hell am I talking about aperture in a composition video? That is why, because aperture is going to be responsible for the background. So if you focus on your subject and you use a wider aperture, the background will be out of focus. And you will do that when you don't have the background which is much interesting and you want to separate the background from the subject. Now, if you want even the background to be included, maybe it has some kind of interest, you will use a smaller aperture somewhere about f8 to f14. So depending on what kind of interest your background has or what kind of separation do you want from your subject, you have to smartly use the aperture. Now, if you don't know how exactly aperture works, I have a separate in-depth video about it. The link will be popping right here and also in the description below. The next tip is to place some kind of person in your image. Now, when you're shooting landscapes, it might be very difficult for the viewer to visualize the depth and the scale of the landscape. Placing a human being can actually change it a lot. It can not only add a different subject to your image, but also when you place such a human being, since you know what an average human being size is, you basically get to know the scale of the landscape. And this can really create a very dynamic and a very different looking image. So just with placing the human being, you can see the difference is a lot and you get to visualize the overall scene in a much better manner. Now the question is, sort of we understood what composition guidelines are, I got to understand the tips, but how should I keep this in mind? I understand, I said that this is the main challenge in photography. When you're photographing, you have to actually keep these things in mind at the initial stages. You can use the grids from your cameras. You can also use the grids that are present in Lightroom to actually compose your images in post-processing. but I will actually suggest to master them while you're shooting in camera. So initially it will be difficult, but as you're practicing, you will notice the process is getting easier and easier. Now for example, you shoot for 99 times keeping all the things in mind. The 100th time you shoot, your mind will be trained automatically to compose your shot, and it will be a lot easier and a fun process. So make sure you're trying hard, but also at the same time you're keeping the compositions very simple. Don't try to complicate your compositions. Make the compositions simpler and also at the same time visually appealing to the viewer. Try to create better composition, try to create better looking images. I hope now you enjoyed this video and you know what composition is, and if it helped you, press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more such content. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.